Minister at the moment is currently seeking a sanction from the European Commission for a separate slurry storage scheme. And this scheme, at the moment, it looks like it will offer 60% grant aid and a dedicated 90,000 ceiling for farmers. And again, this is for nutrient storage investment. So it's currently in the works and the details have yet to emerge on this grant aid measure, but the expectation is that the scheme will be launched from early 2025, subject to Commission approval. So there might be options within that for pig farmers for slurry storage on their own farms.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of The Pig Edge, Teagasc's pig podcast with me, Amy Quinn, where we are bringing you the latest news, information and advice to keep Irish pig farmers up to date. Manure management has been a much talked about topic on farms this year, and on August 21st, the Nutrient Importation Storage Scheme was announced as part of the Targeted Agricultural Modernisation Scheme, TAMS 3, by the Minister for Agriculture, Food and the Marine, Charlie McConalogue. In this episode, we're joined by Specialised Pig Advisor Emer McCrum to explore what this new scheme means for pig producers and how it could impact their businesses.
At the end of August, Minister McConalogue announced the opening of the scheme, and this was part of the suite of measures currently available under TAMS 3. So the scheme came about as part of the Nitrates Derogation Renewal Plan, and this essentially outlines a series of actions, all with the objective of improving water quality. So the objective of the Nutrient Importation Storage Scheme, or NISS, is to create additional storage capacity and just provide farmers with greater flexibility to utilise the organic nutrients. And I suppose this is especially important if we look at the year we've had to date as well, and perhaps a trend in more recent years of unpredictable weather patterns. So the scheme grant aids additional storage facilities to manage the importation of organic fertilisers. In other words, it isn't a scheme for increasing storage on pig farms, but rather on those holdings where organic nutrients are imported each year.
Could you break down the specifics of the scheme? So what level of funding is available and what exactly is covered under this scheme?
The scheme will provide a 70% grant rate for additional storage facilities. It's important to point out that this scheme has its own dedicated investment ceiling of €90,000 per holding, or in the case of eligible registered farm partnerships, that increases to €160,000 per holding. So it's a standalone scheme. In other words, any money drawn down under NISS won't impact the ceilings of the 10 other measures currently available under TAMS that might be applicable to those importing farmers. Multiple applications per tranche will be accepted. However, the minimum investment for approval is €2,000 per application. In terms of the eligible investments, items are limited to circular slurry stores, geomembrane lined stores and manure pits. And the reason for this is to ensure the facility will continue to be available for slurry importation. And there are a series of ancillary or sub-investments also available, such as covers, submersible pumps and protective fencing, just subject to the main investment selected. Now, many farmers had hoped the incentive would be open to underground mass concrete tanks, but as it stands, those concrete tanks are not eligible for grant aid under this measure.
And what are the key eligibility criteria for applicants who want to take advantage of this scheme?
So the usual TAMS requirements apply, and these are available in more details on the department website. But some of the key criteria for this scheme include the applicant must have a whole farm stocking rate of less than 150 kilos of nitrogen in the year preceding the submission of application. And this is just to ensure that there is capacity on the holding to spread the imported slurry or manure. And just to be aware as well, if the applicant is operating a holding with a grassland stocking rate greater than 130 kilos of nitrogen per hectare, they must have undertaken soil sampling in line with the requirements of the Nitrates Action Plan. And this soil sampling requirement also applies to all arable holdings. So in other words, really the scheme is particularly targeted at those farmers with a deficit of organic fertiliser, such as those with a low stocking rate or perhaps non-livestock holdings, like of your tillage enterprises. And it's important to note as well, the applicant must have a contract in place each year for a minimum term of 5 years to import nutrients. And this contract will declare the volume of organic fertiliser to be imported. So the applicant must have that contract completed and signed at application stage. It should detail the exporter or the exporters and the volume of slurry to be imported each year for that period of 5 years. And that's a really important point, as failure to import the slurry every year will result in a penalty with a recoupment rate of 20% for each year that the importation has not taken place. And the remaining criteria then, which the department will take into account when processing applications, include the size of the holding, whether any part of that holding is located within an area of natural constraint, and the nitrates production prior to export as well. And finally, the applicant's age will be a factor in this too, with priority given to younger farmers when assessing those applications. Now, there are marking sheets that are used by the department for the purpose of assessing applications, and they are available just to read through on the department website.
Okay, these are just some important things to know, really.
Yes, exactly.
Emer, you mentioned that this scheme won't directly impact storage on pig farms, but it could be a viable option for producers to consider and discuss further with importing farmers.
Yes, I think so, Amy, absolutely. The scheme will give the importing farmer, I suppose, to start with them, greater flexibility to incorporate and to manage the use of organic fertilizers on their farms. And that additional storage capacity on site will also aid those importing farmers just in planning and managing the application of slurry, be that from weather conditions to the availability of labour. And maybe in certain cases, it might make the use of the like of umbilical systems achievable, for instance, and that might not have been possible previously. And for pig farmers, then, of course, the additional capacity just would allow for the like of better planning for transportation of slurry, but also provide an additional buffer. And that's something certainly with the spring we had would be fresh in the minds of a lot of pig farmers. And I suppose just for the importing farmer, another attractive element is the continued accelerated capital allowances secured by the Minister. And this allows storage investments to be written off against tax over 2 years. And in addition to that, the government has secured approval from the European Investment Bank for qualifying investments in this area of nutrient storage to be automatically eligible for a green financing discount rate under the government-funded Growth and Sustainability Loan Scheme. So that side of it is positive. I'll just say at the moment, planning permission is required for all of the investments, but the Minister has stated that a provision will be made for a separate exempted development threshold in respect of standalone nutrient storage following the enactment of the planning bill. So that's another positive to consider.
So just so producers are aware, what is the process for farms who want to apply to this scheme? Are there any key steps they should be aware of?
The NISS process is actually slightly different to like the other schemes under TAMS that we might be familiar with. So it's not made through ag food, and instead all applications must be submitted by completing an application form, and this is currently available online. And in addition to that, you also need to gather the usual documentation that's needed for TAMS applications. So the like of your farmyard layout plans, drawings, evidence of site ownership, and so on. And those completed application forms, along with the supporting documentation, they can be submitted via email or post to the department, and details of where to send those are available on the website as well. I'll just mention here, maybe, Amy, that where a valid application does not receive approval in the first assessment or first tranche, that application will be carried forward to one subsequent tranche. So unless it's withdrawn by the applicant. And if the application is not successful in that subsequent or second tranche, it will then automatically be rejected. And just an important point to highlight, as is the case with all TAMS, any expenditure or work that's started before the date of submission of an application is ineligible. So any deposits paid on or after the date of submission of an application are considered eligible, but just to be aware that I suppose any payments made prior to approval from the department are at the applicant's own risk. And the scheme, as we sit today, it's currently open. The closing date has not yet been announced. It's still to be confirmed. But I would say, just to speak to your advisor maybe and familiarise yourself with the full terms and conditions, the application process and the specifications, all of which are available online.
Emer, you mentioned that the application process for this scheme isn't going to be done through the Ag Food website, and that'll be done by application form. How does this application form differ to the Ag Food site?
So first of all, Amy, I suppose it isn't an interactive online portal, if you like. So you'd have to print out your application form. It is available on the website, and just fill in your own holding details in addition to the details of the exporter, if you like. So in this case, maybe the pig farmer would have to fill out their own details, and just to pop in the quantity of slurry that's been exported as well. So it's more of a paper-based system, if you like, but all of the materials from your documentation and the application form can be scanned as it normally would be. In other cases, it's onto the ag food system, but in this case, we can pop it into an email and send it across to the department.
Emer, looking ahead, do you foresee any further developments coming in terms of nutrient storage that farmers should keep an eye on?
Yes, certainly. The Minister at the moment is currently seeking a sanction from the European Commission for a separate slurry storage scheme. And this scheme, at the moment, it looks like it will offer 60% grant aid and a dedicated 90,000 ceiling for farmers. And again, this is for nutrient storage investment. So it's currently in the works and the details have yet to emerge on this grant aid measure, but the expectation is that the scheme will be launched from early 2025, subject to Commission approval. So there might be options within that for pig farmers for slurry storage on their own farms.
Okay, and Emer, to wrap up, let's touch just quickly on the TAMS 3 Pig and Poultry Investment Scheme. We've seen, I suppose, limited uptake so far. Do you anticipate any changes that might make it more attractive for producers?
Yes, indeed, Amy, it has been limited, and particularly in the area of new builds, I would say. It's important to point out, I suppose, that our pig department, the Teagasc pig department, have engaged with the Department of Agriculture regarding the current specifications, particularly in the area of new build housing. And following these discussions, we are expecting to see changes to the existing specs in the coming weeks. So I would advise producers to keep an eye for updates on this, as while we don't have any detail on it at the moment, changes that are introduced to the specs, there's the potential there, I suppose, to increase the viability of seeking TAMS 3 for many pig farmers in the country.
Thanks, Emer. So ultimately, there is potential here for this nutrient storage scheme to ease some pressure, and it might be worth some farmers at least starting a conversation about it with some of the farms that import their slurry, really. Thanks, Emer.
Thanks, Amy.
That's it for this episode of The Pig Edge, and thanks to Emer for joining me on the show. Don't forget to listen and follow on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast from so you never miss an episode. And for more information from the Pig Development Department, go to teagasc.ie. I'm Amy Quinn. Thanks for listening.